We'll be creating this, drawing on something and then wiping it away. And in order to do this, we're going to need some assets. Here in Photoshop are two hands, but I only need one of these hands, this one. Using the marquee tool to marquee, select, draw out what I need, and I do need the thumb, so I'll click off and draw again. Image crop. I'm going to make this a PNG with an alpha background. Right now it's a solid background. Pick up the magic wand tool, click on select subject right there, and it usually does a good job. Miss a few pixels right here, and I should correct this now, but later on I'll show you how to correct it after the fact, because while you're working in After Effects, you never know when you come up with an issue. You want to be able to jump back, make a correction, and see that workflow. Knock out the background. All it was the magic wand tool and clicking on select subject. Copy this selection, Command C or Control C on a PC. Paste it, Command V or Control V throughout this bottom layer. And save this out as a PNG. File, export, save for web and legacy. Click on save and save the hand. And I'll do the same thing for the hand with the piece of chalk in it. Marquee tool just to get what you need. Don't need that extra stuff. Image crop. Magic wand tool. Select subject. Copy, Command C, Control C. Paste, Command V, Control V throughout that bottom layer. And save the file, and then you're ready to begin. In order to get this done, you sometimes have to get creative on your path of working. First part, let's just get the icon alone and then be able to draw out that icon using the image. And now let's take a look at this SVG and getting it back into After Effects as an Illustrator file, so this way it can be used as artwork. Open up Illustrator, open up that file, and luckily there's no hard part. All you have to do is to save this file as an Illustrator file so After Effects can open it up. File, save as, and just select the type to be an Illustrator file, Adobe Illustrator, and save your cloud. And go back to After Effects. Let's import the Illustrator file, File, Import File, selecting the cloud, clicking on Import, and clicking OK. Make a new composition, new composition, call it my final scene. This is a toggle to turn on and off the background of the composition. With it off, and I drag out the cloud to this layer, we don't see the cloud because it has black stroke around it. So turn this back off in order to see that stroke. The goal is to make this drawn out, and different artwork would be different approaches. Quick way could be to redraw this piece of artwork, but then it's not the original. That takes some time. Here's one alternative. Convert this to a shape, and that's the first step. You could right click, or with this selected, go into layer, create shape from vector layer. Here's our original Illustrator layer, and I don't need it anymore, so I'm pressing delete key down here. It doesn't delete it from the project, just deletes it from the timeline. Let's explore this layer. You open up the group and content, you can see the different parts this is made out of. I can notice it's missing a stroke, and that's because the fill is what's making up this thickness here. Let me delete the fill. And yes, you could delete properties. Here's the path. going around it, and there's actually two paths, an inner and an outer path. I'm going to select path 1, which is the inner path, and I'm going to press delete. All right, we have this line, but if you try to give this line some properties of a stroke up here, you're not going to see it because there's no stroke property over here. To quickly get a stroke property on this path and to be able to see it, here's what you do. Click off so you have nothing selected. Pick a shape, any shape, and just draw out that shape. You could adjust the shape stroke by clicking the word stroke, making sure solid is selected with no stroke. That means we're back in the same situation of the current cloud without the stroke on it. With the stroke on it, it looks like this. Normal for the blend mode and 100% for opacity. And you can change the thickness of the stroke by going up here and typing a new number. 5 or 20 or 50, whatever you enjoy. With this new shape selected, let me pick up the move tool again so I'm no longer clicking out and creating shapes, but I'm selecting things. Go under content and go to the rectangle. And under the rectangle, you find stroke. Highlight the word stroke, this property, and copy it. Command C or Control C. Go to your cloud outline and go to its contents and press Control V for paste. And now you pasted the stroke onto this path. I no longer need this placeholder one, so I'll select it and press delete. Now that it has a stroke, let me show the composition again. What can you do with this stroke? I'm going to change its color, and the color can also be changed by clicking here and picking color. I'm going to add a trim path to this so it's drawn out. Selecting this path number 2, and this is just good practice, and you'll see later on if you have compound paths, you want to be able to maybe give each path its own trim. So selecting the path right here and going under Add Trim Paths. And that will attach this trim path within this group. Expanding trim path 1 and going to the end offset, and I'll just drag that all the way down to 0. And I'll put my keyframe for end right here. I'll go out to 1 second. If you don't see 1 second here, you can toggle in between by pressing the clicking off, pressing the Control key on a PC or the Command key on a Mac to toggle between hour, minutes, seconds, or frames. I'm going to leave it at frames. So pressing the Control key and clicking, or Command key and clicking those numbers. 30 frames is 1 second away. And I'll increase the end to 100%. Within 1 second, we have that cloud drawn out. The next step, let's start building up the scene. I'm going to import a background, File, Import File, and there's the chalkboard. I'm going to drag the chalkboard beneath the cloud. We don't see the cloud because it's being drawn out. And we can play with the different mode effects to mix them together. If you don't see the mixing effects here, make sure you click on this icon for expanding that. Go to Mode, and you could pick maybe an overlay. That will get some of the grain happening there. Maybe I'll come back to that. Purpose of this video, I'm going to leave it as normal so it's easier to see. To have the hand draw this out, we need a hand. Right click, Import, File. You could went under File, Import. I'm going to be using my hand PNG assets that I made earlier in Photoshop. And it's going to be this one, the one with the chalk in it. I'll click on Import. So that's a PNG file. I'm going to drag that to the topmost layer. Take a look at the scale. way bigger than I need. Now holding down the Shift key in uniform, scaling it down, spacebar to move it here. I have the Move tool selected, that way I can reposition it. The anchor point's important. If we want this arm to tilt a little bit, rotate a little bit, you might take a moment to readjust the anchor point. Maybe it goes a little more towards where the elbow would be. Make sure to pick up the Move tool again. So let's get start drawing out here. Let me move my hand into position. And the rest is just you being an artist. Before I continue, let me scale up the hand. I think it needs to be a little bigger, like this. And I'll drag it back down to position. At this frame, I'll press P for position, and I'll put my first keyframe. And the rest is just you being an artist. Move ahead a few frames, hold down the Control and right arrow. Let's say 3 frames later. Control right arrow, 1, 2, 3. Another 3 frames later. 1, 2, 3. Getting there. Control right arrow. Let's take a look. And even though it's not following exactly the line, like it's missing this little indent here, in real time, you're not going to notice that. If you care, I do care. But if you visually care, like it actually makes a difference visually, then you could go to that exact moment and just move the hand to here. You can zoom your timeline a little closer, maybe a frame back. Right around there, it could be a little lower, adding that extra keyframe, if it visually makes a difference. Let me continue with my Control right arrow, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm just positioning the hand. Get it go all the way around. 2, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's where it ends. All right, now we need the hand to enter and leave. I have no enter animation for the hand. Let me do the leave one since I'm here. 1, 2, 3. And that seems to be our visual rhythm, but I'll do it twice. 1, 2, 3. And I'll just drag the hand off. Where is it momentum-wise? It's going up this way. So instead of an abrupt stop, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, maybe it drags itself down this way. All right, don't forget about the hand's momentum. It just doesn't fall. Okay, we got our cloud. As I mentioned, we didn't get the cloud, the hand to show up. And we already started this. That's all right. I'm going to select both of these layers, the hand layer and the cloud layer. I'll just move them a little further down. So with them both selected, I just dragged the layer right here. So now there's this pause before it begins. Now, just to the hand layer, I'm going to extend it backwards towards frame 0. And that means when you see the double arrow, like that, just click and drag all the way down to frame 0. And let's look at the momentum again. That hand has to be coming in from the lower right. So if I press P for position, here's our first key drawing out the cloud. And at frame 0, my hand maybe is over here. I think it happens a little too quick getting on screen. I guess that depends upon how much time you have to tell the story. I can select both of these layers again And somewhere in the middle, just drag them a little more like this. Click to deselect both layers and just select the top layer again and extend it again back to frame 0. And this time I'll just move that keyframe that I already created. And that gives it a little extra time to get up there. Let me make sure it starts totally off screen. We got our cloud showing up. All right, now that the cloud shows up, it's time to erase the cloud. To erase this cloud, it's just not going to disappear. We can animate the cloud, that would be fun. Instead, you're going to make it just wipe away. And this will bring up masking and applying effects just to a mask. Let's do the wipe away part by giving us something to look at first. And that's going to be the other hand wiping it away. And these hands were brought through Photoshop to make the backgrounds transparent. And here's the hand. This is the other hand. Wow, that's a big hand. Let me scale it, S key, with that layer selected, and I'll scale a little smaller. Let's take a look at both hands. Roughly the same size, right? Want it to be a little bigger, you go ahead. Whatever works out for you. Next, I'm going to drag this hand a little further down. This is a little after the 2-second mark. So our story starts out, someone draws a cloud, and then someone erases the cloud. Not just slaps their hand up on the chalkboard like that, slap. No, they're going to be erasing this cloud. And we'll be making this hand a little bit bigger. And the hand's going to start somewhere over here. And just like before, moving this pivot down to here, picking back up the move tool, lowering the hand a little bit. And before I continue, I notice a little pixel cleanup needed in Photoshop. Let's take care of that now. Right-click on this hand and reveal in Explorer, or just show it wherever it lives on your hard drive. And open it up in Photoshop again. So right-click, open with, and select Photoshop, or however you want to open up in Photoshop. And the reason we're doing this, get rid of some of that non-transparent pixels. So with the magic wand tool selected, just click in there, change the tolerance, the sensitivity of pixel selection by changing this number. Higher numbers mean more pixels will be selected, lower numbers more precise with the color pixels that are selected. And I'll press the delete key. And that seemed to do the job. Now when I save it, Command S or Control S, I don't need Photoshop anymore. You can see that it's instantly updated in After Effects, so you can continue working with it. Zoom out again. All right, this hand's going to erase that cloud. And animating the action first, and then dealing with the effect. So the hand maybe comes in from here. P key for position. Clicking here. And let's say a second later. Let's say 10 frames later. Hands up to here. Reaching for that cloud. Doesn't like the cloud. At this point, you could just have the hand drag that cloud back down and away using a null object connecting to here, and that would be kind of a cool animation, but I'm showing right now how to do wipes. So it's grabbing for this cloud and maybe has to go a little higher to wipe it away. Another 10 frames later, holding down the Control Shift right arrow. It's over here. You can look at your motion path. See if that's working. And then maybe another 10 frames later, Control Shift this way. Doing this little swoosh downward bit, and then it's going to be off frame. Let's take a look at that timing. Slows down a little between here and here. We could just fix that by changing the keyframe timing. This one happens a little quicker, and that one's happening quicker, and so is this one. And then it's going off screen. And make sure you take a look at your motion path. You do that by going under View, making sure Show Layer Controls is on. Under View Options, making sure you have all this fun stuff, including keyframes and motion paths selected. My motion path selected, I'm not happy with that key, so I'll just click it and just drag it up a little bit, making it look a little more rounder, its trajectory. So we've got the potential, moving on, moving off. Let's study the hand for a moment. To make it look a little more smoother, turn on motion blur just for that hand layer. And that's this icon right here. You don't see that icon, make sure this first one's checked. And that second one is just for your modes, but it's nice to have it there. Now you can see more blurred. Now you can see the hand is blurred. If it looks a little too blurred, it's based upon the angle. The blurriness will help smooth out the look, so your frames won't look so pixelated and jumpy as the motion happens. If you want to control this a little bit, go to your composition settings, click on Advanced, and shutter angle will be the angle of blurriness. If you want it to be a little less blurry, since it's going from left to right 90 degrees, you can see kind of solidifies it a little more. And I like 90 degrees. So it really depends upon your motion and the look you're going for. We got this hand motion going. Next part is to wipe everything away. So what effects to use to wipe this away? I want something that will smudge, and what comes to mind, I'm looking for some type of blurriness. The second is some type of tint or opacity has to happen, and when it gets wiped away, this part gets wiped away on the left and middle, going to the left, but this right side is still solid. So we have to figure out a way to achieve that. First thing, let's think about the formulas. What would a good wipe look like? Go to its effects, go under Window. You don't see effects. Effects controls, right down here. Right now there's nothing. What comes to mind is blurriness. I need some type of blur. And fastbox blur I think is a good choice just because it happens quickly. We could try these other blurs as well. An experiment. I'm going with fastbox blur. I'll select it and I'll drag it to the cloud. Safer way is to just drag it to the cloud layer. Increase the blur radius. I think that would be a good smudge. So there'll be just a faint image left in the end. I don't think I even need to do opacity on this one. So this will be the after. You can experiment with horizontal versus vertical. And so horizontal, of course, give you these horizontal streaks. The vertical will give you these vertical streaks. So the hand's moving left to right. It'll be horizontal. And I can increase the iterations to make it look a little bit smoother, like this. If you want more streaks, you can use that number. This would be a good setting, horizontal, if you're using text. With this image, I think horizontal and vertical just works out. And I don't need to be such a big 5, and it doesn't need to be such a high number either. So experiment. You're going for visuals. There's no exact formula sometimes because you're working with different pieces of art. Let me decrease the iterations because I think 7 was too smooth. Let me try 5. So this will be the end look. How do we get there? Starting from a solid, going to this blurred part, we'll be using a mask. And the concept of mask, one layer showing through to another layer, and a layer can also be a whole composition, or just hiding part of a graphic, or showing only part of a graphic. one concept of layers. The other concept of layers, there are masks to apply effects to. Now, in order to apply mask to this, I need to convert it to a composition, because if I start drawing out a mask now, it's just going to add to the shape. It's like, that's not what I want. I want to define an area just to apply effects to. And to do this, I'm just going to cut this effect. Control X or Command X just to cut. This will just make things a little easier in a moment from now. Then right click on the cloud and pre-compose. And we're doing this because we need to apply a mask to the effects to apply the effects. And the only way that's going to happen is if this is no longer a shape, but it's a shape within a layer composition. So this is a shape. Right click the shape, pre-compose, calling it cloud, clicking on OK. Then just paste back your effect. Command V, Control V for paste. If you lost your effect, you forgot to do it, no worries. Just drag out your effect again. You only lost 30 seconds of your life. It's okay to just repair it in case you forgot to copy and paste. This composition, within this composition is the original shape. And that original shape is the cloud, and it looks blurry because this effect is on this outside of this cloud's composition. Let's draw a mask, so this way the cloud goes from a solid and animates as the swipe happens. Pick up this rectangular tool, and you could use the pen tool if you want. I think the rectangular tool is good enough for this. Draw out a rectangle. You see the rectangle like this, but now we're going to animate it going like this with an effect on it. Pick up the move tool again because we only needed one mask. Under your cloud layer, which is the composition, under effects, this is the mask. You'll see, if we expand under effects, fastbox blur, composition options. If you click the plus sign, this will create an option to apply a mask that's within this layer, mask 1, mask 1. Why don't you see this effect applied to this? That's because the effect will only be applied when this mask travels across. And let me select this mask and turn back on the effect, and you can see this is what we're going to do. We're going to animate this getting longer. Let me select this whole mask, and I'll do that by clicking on the word mask, and I'll do that by going to the mask, mask path. That's a whole mask being selected, and I'll just drag it back again. This is what we're going to achieve, blurriness happening as the hand moves across. Going back to frame, let's look when the hand comes into the scene, and right around here, it's when we're going to start animating the mask. Let's say around there. Put your first keyframe in for the mask path. And the rest is just going through the timeline. I'm pressing the Control right arrow to move a few frames over. And I want to just select these 2 points on this line, on this mask. So I'll click off, and I'll just click back on. See how now only this point selected and this point? Before, when I had clicked off and I clicked on mask path 1, all my points were selected. So clicking off, some neutral area, but not too neutral because we still have to be on this layer. Just clicking so that anchor point selected, and shift click this next anchor point. I'll just drag my mask this way, keep up with the finger. And so there you can see it's getting blurred. I'll go a few more frames forward, and I'll just still drag forward. Right, I still have these 2 points selected. So let's just go follow. I expanded my mask. And that's it. Let me play it out, and you can experiment with the effects to get your own looks going.